I also sent around, I started another YouTube channel. We have a shul YouTube channel, and I started another YouTube channel. Right now, what it has on it is is Pirkei Avos, but I'm giving a class here in Israel starting from the beginning. They're half-hour classes, and it's not video. It's not video. It's audio classes, and whatever. So and I'll be putting up other classes on there also. So I just wanted people to subscribe to that. Anyway, if you open up that email that you got from Catherine earlier today, so then you'll see that information on it. Okay, we're on chapter 4, Mishnah Yud Ches, Mishnah 18. So the Mishnah says as follows. I also wanted to make a suggestion that you can always go to the shul and during office hours and get I'm pretty sure they're still on the same shelf, that in the place where where classes get around by the table, to the left of that there's a bookshelf, one of the rolling bookshelves, and in there are those pamphlets that we use for Pirkei Avos, the blue and white. And I think it's just a good thing to have. It has a little minor commentary, whatever. If anybody wants to prepare for the class, I think it's a good thing. Okay, so Rabbi Shimon Elazar says, "Al turatze es chavercha b'shas kaso," that you shouldn't try to appease a person at the time of his anger. V'al tenachamehu b'shah shemesa mutal lefanav, and you shouldn't try to comfort him at the time when his dead person is lying in front of him. Mesa mutal lefanav means that between death and burial, and that when a person has, they're in the process of burying somebody, they have in the process of somebody passing away, so then you shouldn't try to comfort them. And the truth is, la halacha, we don't do that, right? There is no nichum avelim at that point, right? There is no comforting of the mourners. We don't say to them, hamakom yenachem eschem, right? We don't. If we happen to go and visit them before the funeral, we don't say the traditional greeting of mourners. There is no nechama. There's no comfort that's given. But this is not saying halacha. This is saying it not as halacha. This is saying it as an ethical principle. And as an ethical principle, it's saying that you should not try to calm him down and comfort him at the time when his dead person is lying before him. V'al tishalo b'shas nidro, and you shouldn't ask him at the time of his neder. And let me give you the background here. The background is that when a person, there's such a concept in the Torah called the neder, a vow, right? That a person is allowed to take a vow. This is what we do on the beginning of Yom Kippur. We start off with Kol Nidre, and the whole concept of Kol Nidre is where we come to shul and we ask to be released of the vows that we made this past year. Now it's not really a legal thing, Kol Nidre, because you can't really release vows that way. So what we do is on Erev Rosh Hashanah, right after davening, we get together 3 people that constitutes a beis din, that constitutes a rabbinical court, and that you relinquish your vows. You stand in front of them and you say, any vows that I made this year, I want to be released from. Now, the way to release from a vow is a promise, and it's a promise that you're locked into. And the Gemara, the Talmud, talks in a very, very, very negative and disdainful way of a person that makes a vow and that does not fulfill their vow. And vows are constituted not only by saying, I promise that I'm going to do this, but even by doing something 3 times in a row without saying the words beli neder, right? But you obligate yourself to do that. That also constitutes a vow. Now, when does a person make a vow? You should know that in halacha, we don't look at vows in such a positive way. In other words, we don't really want to have to make vows. But there are times where a person has no choice. They're floundering. They're not able to control themselves. They want something to change in their lives. And the only way they can do it is by promising, by making a vow that this is the way it's going to be. A person can't motivate themselves to study every day. So they make a promise that, I promise, I vow, I swear that I'm going to learn every single day. At 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to learn 15 minutes a day. And that constitutes a vow. Now, very often, The way that a person will take a vow is that they'll take a vow out of anger. They'll take a vow out of frustration. Something's going wrong, and they say, okay, you know what? I'm never going to do this again, or I'm going to do this again. And in the Talmud, there are even serious types of vows that we take. I look at Harvey and I say, you know what, Harvey, you can't derive any benefit from my property anymore. You can't come onto my property. That's a vow. If it's said in a certain structure, that becomes a vow. Well, at that moment that a person is making a vow, you can't interact with that person. Now, what would be the interaction? The interaction would be if you told the person that, look, there's a way to get out of your vow. The way to get out of a vow is by saying, if I would have known the time when I took the vow that these were going to be the ramifications, that this is where that vow was going to go, and that this is what was going to happen in my life because I took the vow, I never would have taken the vow in the first place. It's called a Pesach, an opening, and it's a way to be able to relinquish from a vow, because you can't get out of a vow. You promised, you put yourself into it, and therefore you must fulfill that vow. However, there is a window where you could say that, if I would have known then what I know now, I never would have taken the vow. Only problem is that if I get in your face while you're taking a vow, if you are really, really emotional about this, you're really angry about it, you're going to say, yes, I realize that I could get out of this vow, but I don't want to get out of this vow. I'm taking this vow even knowing that things could happen that I don't really want to happen, but I'm still going to take this vow. And you could lock yourself in that you can never get out of this vow. And the only way to get out of this vow is to die. There's just no way out of the vow. And therefore, the third thing that the Mishnah says is al tishalo b'shas nidra. When a person is making a neder, when a person is making a vow, meaning that a person is in this kind of state, so then al tishalo, don't teach him how to get out of the vow, because that's only going to backfire. Va'al tishtadil lir'oso b'shas kalkalo. You shouldn't see him at the hour of his disgrace. What kind of disgrace are we talking about? When he has his pants down? I mean, what kind of, he slips on a banana peel? What's the shas kalkolase? So according to most of the commentaries, shas kalkolaso means when he's sullied and dirtied with sin. In other words, when he's caught doing a transgression. So don't tishtadel liros. Don't attempt to try to see him. Don't try to talk to him at that point. Don't try to do anything, because a person is embarrassed, and because he's embarrassed at that point, you don't want to rub salt into his wound, and therefore stay away from him. Okay, what a fascinating Mishnah. The question, of course, that you have to ask is, what do these four things have to do with each other? Which is relatively simple, but we'll see that in a little bit. What do these four things have to do with each other? And the other thing that I think you have to ask on this Mishnah is, we have a word very often when the Talmud will say a statement that is obvious. The Talmud will ask the question, Pshita, isn't that obvious? Like every idiot knows this. And if you know it, then the Talmud doesn't need to say it. If this is something that is intuitive, then you don't need to say it. When you see a guy that's ticked off, right? Get out of there, right? Don't stand around and try to talk to the guy and try to be rational with the person. It's not going to happen. So why? I need a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Boy, it's a good thing I've got that in the Mishnah, because otherwise, you know what? I would have gotten right into the guy's face. Like, who would do that? So you remember we've learned that in Mishnayos and Pirkei Avos, there is nothing obvious. There's nothing obvious. There's nothing that meets the eye. Everything is behind the surface. There's powerful messages here. There's an incredible amount of character development, of things you need to know, but it's not on the surface. Well, this seems not only to be on the surface, this seems to be superfluous. It seems unnecessary to have to tell me that when a guy's relative dies, don't go to comfort him. Let him relax. Let him get into it a little bit. Let him deal with it. He's got to make a funeral. He's got things he's got to do. Of course, you shouldn't go to him. So what does this mean? So according to one of the commentaries, what it means is that when a guy is angry, at the time of his anger, don't try to appease him, because it's not going to help. We have an obligation to appease a person that's angry at us. And so much so that if we go to them 3 times and we ask them to forgive us and they don't forgive us, it becomes literally their problem, that it becomes their transgression and their problem. It's an incredible halacha. However, you can't walk over to a person that you're angry with or that is angry at you and say to them, forgive me, 3 times. I'm off the hook. Right? You can't do that. You go over to them once, then you have to wait some time, then you go over to them again. Very often what will happen when a person is so angry that they won't even hear that you're apologizing to them. There is a person that accuses me of never apologizing to them. I apologize to them 10 times, but accuses me of never apologizing to them. I feel terrible for the person because they're carrying this aveira on their shoulders. Because when you don't forgive a person after 3 times, so then it is no longer that person's problem. It literally becomes your issue. So what the Mishnah is telling us is that if you go over to the person b'shas kaso, if you go over to the person like at the moment that it's happening and try to activate this apology, so then it's just not going to help. The person's not open to listening, and it's not going to help. When a person is in their moments after the death of a person and they haven't yet buried that person, it's not going to help. You can say, Hamakom Yenachim Eschem. You can talk to them in logical kind of ways. You can be emotional with them. It's not going to help. You can go over to a person at the time of his neder and you can try to intellectualize with him and tell him, you know what, there's a way out of this vow. Not going to help. Okay, shkayach. That's obvious. Of course it's not going to help. What ethical lesson is the Mishnah trying to teach me? What am I supposed to walk away with this that I didn't know before I sat down tonight that it's going to somehow change my life and uplift me? What's the message here in this Mishnah? So I think that we have to look carefully at the 4 situations that are being presented in the Mishnah. Anger, mourning, I would say also a type of anger, and an embarrassment from sin. If you look carefully at the Mishnah, each one of them says, al, which is one of the words of don't do X, bishe'at kaso, at the time of his anger. At the time, bisha'ah shemeso mutalafanov, bisha'as nidro, bisha'as kalkaloso. Every time the Mishnah presents to us, don't do this to another person, it uses the word at the time of. At the time of. It doesn't say don't try to calm a person down. It doesn't say don't try to comfort the mourner. It doesn't say don't try to get a person out of his vow. It doesn't say don't talk to a person after he's committed a crime, after he's committed a sin. It says bisha'ah, at a particular moment. Because what the Mishnah is telling me first is that lachol zman va'et. As King Solomon taught us in Koheles, in Ecclesiastes, everything has its time and place. And that there are things, it's not often the things that we do, it's the timing of those things. In a classroom, so a kid tells a joke. One kid tells a joke, the teacher laughs, the class laughs, it was a great moment, move on. Another kid tells a joke, kid gets thrown out, ends up in the principal's office, teacher is all upset. It was a better joke. What was the problem? The problem was the timing. There's a moment, there's a time for everything. When King Solomon presents us in Ecclesiastes, he presents us in such a beautiful way. There is a time to laugh, there is a time to cry. There is a time for joy, there is a time for mourning. Every single thing has its place. Incredibly, that is taught here in Israel. Unfortunately, the lesson is lost because many people question, if you're ever here in Israel on Yom HaZikaron, the day before Yom HaAtzmaut, Yom HaZikaron is Memorial Day. Now, in America, Memorial Day most people need to be reminded that Memorial Day is not barbecue day, Yom HaBarbecue, and it is also not just a day off from work. Memorial Day is meant to memorialize all those veterans that died in our wars. We don't take it, I mean, there's always ceremonies and things in America, but it's not taken so seriously. American Memorial Day. Israeli Memorial Day is like a Yom Kippur here. I would dare say that there are more adherents to Yom HaZikaron here than there are to Yom HaKippurim. It's a day of a sanctity. The stores close Erev Yom HaZikaron, and they're closed until late in the afternoon on Yom HaZikaron. The country's down. Usually, this year it wasn't that way, of course, but the cemeteries, hundreds of thousands of people in the military cemeteries in Har Herzl in Jerusalem. I've been there on Yom HaZikaron, literally hundreds of thousands of people there. It is an incredible day, and it's just an incredible thing, but it's very heavy. There's a siren like on Yom HaShoah. There's a siren. There were two sirens, one at night, one during the day. It's a very, very, very heavy day. And then as soon as the day ends, it goes into Yom Ha'atzmaut. And Yom Ha'atzmaut, especially in the national religious world, is a religious holiday. It's like Purim. People have a Suda, people have a meal, people dance and they sing and they celebrate, and it is a religiously observed day. To go from the sadness, from the heaviness of Yom HaZikaron into the joy of Yom Ha'atzmaut without a day in between. There's no transition time. It's just, flip the switch. You go from sadness to joy. Many people question, how is that possible? Many people are amazed that how is that possible to be able to do that? It's very simple. Lakol zman va'et. Everything has its time and everything has its place. And therefore, we are not controlled by our emotions. We control our emotions. And it's not that, I'm sad now. It's beyond my hands. I'm happy now just because I'm happy. I'm happy now because I'm recognizing that now there are things to be happy about. I'm sad now because I'm recognizing that there are things to be sad about. But it's not the emotion that's controlling me, it's me that's controlling the emotion. There are many stories that are told of Gedolim, of great rabbis, who received news of people passing away on Shabbos, and that they didn't react an entire Shabbos. Came Motzoi Shabbos, came Saturday night, and they broke down, they collapsed. And everybody wondered, how is that possible? Well, it's Shabbos Kodesh. There is no mourning on Shabbos. One is not allowed to shed tears in that way on Shabbos. And therefore, they were in control of themselves. Shabbos now requires me to be in a certain emotional state, and therefore I will be in that emotional state. And on Saturday night, when it's not Shabbos anymore, I can now be in a different emotional state. I had an opportunity to actually experience this myself. My mother, Alaa Shalom, passed away on a Thursday. It happened to have been, for those that remember, it happened to have been the 18th anniversary of the shul. It was a very big Shabbos. We had Rav Pesach Krohn was here for Shabbos. We had festivities planned the entire Shabbos. There were meals, there were talks, there were it was a Shabbos of celebration. And I was what was called an onain. I was in this time that the Mishnah is talking about of Meso Mutal Lefanov. In other words, I had to bury my mother on Sunday, and I wasn't in Shiva. I wasn't in mourning yet. I was in this period of time called Aninus, which is between death and burial. During that period of time, so then a person doesn't do positive commandments. You don't make brachos, you don't daven, you don't put on tefillin. But that's only during the week. Shabbos is regular. Now, sort of put yourselves in my shoes. Like, just imagine Shabbos is regular. So here I'm the Rav of a congregation. So I have to speak, I have to lead, I have to sing, I have to dance, because Shabbos is regular. Because there's no aninos, there's no status like this on Shabbos. There's no mourning on Shabbos. I have to say that it was probably the most beautiful Shabbos that I've ever kept, because I had to be so conscious of the holiness of Shabbos in order to be able to make sure that I stayed inside of that holiness and didn't allow myself to get lost in my feelings and my emotions. And therefore I had to stay completely conscious. You know, I spoke once to one of the boys in the shul who was in the army in Israel, who was a lone soldier. He was a Shomer Shabbos, and he was stationed in Lebanon. He was stationed, in Gaza. And he was there during the war. And on Shabbos, they used to go in and they had to do stuff in Gaza. It was a very, very rough time. It was during the Gaza war. And he told me that those Shabbosos, you know, you walked around with your radios and it was just like a regular day. He said, but those were beautiful Shabbosos, because when he wasn't doing that, it was Shabbos. And he had to work hard consciously in order to be able to feel the holiness of Shabbos, because they were in essence desecrating it. You know, it was legal totally, but it wasn't keeping Shabbos. So in order to be able to feel Shabbos, he had to work so hard at thinking and relating to Shabbos. And it's all about being in control of your emotional state, being in control of your feelings, being in control and aware of what's going on around you. And that's why Shlomo Melech tells us, L'chol zman v'eit, everything has its right time. Everything has its proper place. Everything has its proper moment. But the truth is that in these moments, it also has its proper moment. And its proper moment is stay away. If you try to get into a person's face at these times, if you try to get into a person and try to help them at these times, these are going to be harmful. It's going to work in the opposite direction. But how is it possible that Nichum Avelim, comforting the mourners, could be a wrong time? How can it ever be a wrong time to reach out to another person? How could it be a wrong time to try to appease and calm a person down? How could it be a wrong time to ever give advice to a person that they're going to ruin their lives? How could it be a wrong time to tell a person, I think you've committed a transgression and I need to help you with that? How could it ever be a wrong time? So I'll tell you an amazing thing. The world says that my rights end at the beginning of your nose. In other words, I can do whatever I want. I can't touch you, though. I can't punch you in the nose. I can't invade your space that way. In Judaism, we say it a little bit differently. We say that my rights end not at the beginning of your nose, but at the beginning of your space. Which means that part of what we are expected to do, part of Bein Adam Lechavero, part of the laws between one person and another, is to create a space for every person. And every person's space is not meant to be invaded. And there are times where what we're doing, it's not just that it's not going to be helpful to you, but it's actually harmful to you. Because at this moment now, my job is to ensure that you have your space. Now, there are times where I need to invade your space. There are times where I'm told I'm supposed to get into your face. Hocheach tochiach es amisecho. We learned this in this last week's parsha. That if you're doing something wrong, I am obligated to let you know you're doing something wrong. That is not called invading another person's space. At the right moment, And not only that, if I don't try to help you, if I don't tell you that you're doing something wrong, I have actually myself become guilty. I have become responsible, and I become what's called nitfas. I become grabbed in the same sin that you did. This is an incredibly important part of Judaism. Judaism is not about, Torah is not about live and let live. Look, I'm going to do my thing. You're going to do your thing. We're going to be okay. It's not that way. It's not true. It's that we're going to live together, and Kol Yisrael Haraven Zeh Lezeh, we're tied to each other. I care about what you do because what you do affects all of us. Look, I've spoken about this the other night, and this is a big Corona thing that we're learning out of this thing how to care for the people. And it's not about calling and just asking people if they need, if they need tuna fish. We're talking about of the way that we take care of ourselves, by wearing our masks, by doing the things that we're supposed to be doing, by staying out of crowds, by staying away from people. It's not just that we're protecting ourselves, we're protecting others. We can't just think that, you might have the virus and therefore you might affect me. I might be walking around with this thing and therefore I have to protect you from me because I can't invade your space. But there are times where I must invade your space. There are times where I must get into you and let you know that you're doing something wrong. I must be able to be open with you and to tell you. Nichum Avelim, comforting the mourners. I must invade your space. A lot of times people like to put up, hours where they're sitting shiva. I don't mean physically sitting, they're sitting shiva the whole time, but hours where you can come in. That's not really the way shiva works. The way shiva works is that, the person's sitting shiva and you come and visit them. And yes, there's a certain invasion of space, but that is what's required at that moment. It's at that moment that's going to be the thing that's going to help a person. When a person is angry, you have to calm that person down. You've got to speak rationally to that person in the appropriate moment. But we have to go over and we have to talk to that person. But there are times where I have to give you your space, even though there are times that I'm obligated to invade it, to take it away. But there are times where I have to give you your space. To welcome in another person, in order to be able for me to be able to receive you, then I have to be open to you. There has to be room for you. My seho, my intellect, has to be able to make room for you to invade it. If I'm angry and you try to appease me at the wrong time, at that moment, I've lost my seho. And if I have no seho, if I have no intellect, if I have no rationality, I don't have any room to let you into my life. Why is it that when I'm angry, or when I've gotten angry and I've calmed down now, I'm open to listening to you to tell me that, maybe I was wrong, maybe I shouldn't be so angry, maybe there's another way to approach this? Because my seichel, my brains are connected to me. My brains are telling me, don't be an idiot. Listen to what the other person is saying. If they're a smart person and they love you, then they're just trying to help you, that's all. But if you have no intellect, if you have no seichel at that moment, then you're not open to hearing that, which means you're not open to letting somebody into your space. When you're angry, even your most beloved person, your spouse, your child, you have no room for them. What do we often do when we get angry? We storm out of a situation and we walk away. It's not just a function of the anger. I can't be with you right now. I can't be with anyone right now because I have no space for anyone. I have no space because I have no intellect. I have no seichel. I have no control of myself. At this moment right now, I'm not in touch with me. And if I'm not in touch with me, I have no room for you. When I am deeply in touch with myself, then I have space for you. When I'm, God forbid, sick, when I'm, God forbid, sad, and I'm in control of that sickness or that sadness, I'm in control of those feelings, I want you. I want you. I want that support. I want that feeling. I want that sense of you and of you being there, of someone being there. But that's coming from my seho. That's coming from my intellect, not just from my emotions. But when I'm just emotions, I've lost my intellect. I have no space for you. What the Mishnah is teaching me with these 4 cases is that the Mishnah is telling me that when a person loses their seho, they have no sense of self and therefore no room for you, and therefore anything you do is considered an invasion of their space. Invading a person's space is like punching them in the nose. It's called damage. Do you know where not many people remember this, but Ethics of the Fathers, the book of Midos, the book of character development, where does that sit in the larger lexicon of books and of teachings of the Torah? So we know that there was an oral Torah which was written down, and the first writing of the oral Torah was the Mishnah. The Mishnah was written into 6 sections. One of those 6 sections is called Nezikin, is called damages, all the laws of damages. And in that section, you have tractates called Bava Kama, Bava Metzia, Bava Basra, Sanhedrin, Avodah Zarah, tractates that deal with the legal system, that deal with laws, with civil law, contracts. And then the last tractate on that shelf, so to speak, in that section of Nezikin is Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers. So you have to ask the question, why is Ethics of the Fathers in Nezikin? Why is it in damages? Why isn't Ethics of the Fathers, I don't even know where the appropriate place would be, which of the 6 orders of the Mishnah would have been more appropriate, but it certainly has nothing to do with with damages. It's the ethical stuff. Damages, when you learn these Gemaras, it talks about, charging interest, and it talks about if my cow gores you or gores your property, if I ruin your property, if I take away your business, all that kind of stuff. Because we tend to think that harm is when I punch you in the nose, or harm is when I take away your money. What the Mishnah is telling me is that harm is when you invade my space. When you hurt me emotionally, that's also damage. That's also called harm. And that is as serious as stealing $1 million from you. We tend to put it in a different category. We tend to call the person who absconds with somebody else's money as a thief, a criminal. But somebody who hurts somebody else emotionally, we don't put them in the same category. That's such nice people. What the Mishnah is saying to us is that you can't go over to a person when they're angry. You can't go over to a person when they're dealing with the dead right now. You can't go over to a person when they're dealing with their own sins and their own transgressions, the ramifications of their own shortcomings. But it's not just that it's not going to help them. It's going to hurt them. And you are causing damage. And you're not allowed to cause damage to another human being. And the reason that you're causing damage is because at that moment, the act of comforting is a beautiful thing. But at that moment, that very same act of comforting, because it's at the wrong time, is damaging because they have no seho right now. They have no intellect. And because they have no intellect, they have no control of themselves, of who they are, no knowledge and awareness of that. Therefore, there's no space for you. And when you try to get into that space, you're going to harm them. You remember the famous story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, where a guy in Jerusalem makes a party and he invites his best bud, Kamsa, and his servant sends the invitation to his enemy, Bar Kamsa, And the guy walks into a party, and there is his arch enemy sitting in front of him in the party, eating sushi. And he goes nuts. And he says, get this guy out of here. And the guy says, no, do me a favor. Don't throw me out. Don't embarrass me. He says, get out of here. And he says, I'll pay for half the party. He says, no. He says, I'll write you a check for the entire party right now. And he says, no. And he picks him up and he throws him out of the party. This is considered the beginning of the destruction of Jerusalem. This is the quintessential paradigmatic case of sinas chinam, of unjustified hatred. But there's $1 million question. Every rabbi in Jerusalem was at that party. Nobody could say anything to the guy that made the party. Lo Michale Rabbanan, the rabbis had nothing to say. They couldn't stand up for this bar Kamsa. They couldn't get into the face of this guy who threw the party. Hocheach tocheach asami seho, it says in the Torah. You have to rebuke somebody. You have to let them know they're doing something wrong. Because they saw how freaked out this guy was, that he had at that moment lost his seho. At that moment, he was no longer in control of himself. He had no idea who he was. And at that moment, to say something to him would have been damaging him. At that moment, to say something to him would never have helped, but it not only wouldn't have helped, it would have been considered like punching him in the nose, which was inappropriate. And therefore, the Rabbanan couldn't say anything. They could not say anything. That wasn't the right time. You know, there are times when a kid does something wrong, and you just have to suck it up. Not because of you, but because of them. Because of their emotional state at the moment, they could not hear you, but it could destroy them. The Mishnah is teaching me a level of sensitivity to another human being to recognize that the things that we do and the time that we do them are critical. The timing is critical, but not for us to look like good people, but because what we do could actually be harmful to another person. Okay, the truth is, I've only touched the surface. I see that David Elman is having a hard time with what I'm saying. I've only touched the surface. I've got one more sort of piece that we have to get through, but at least and we'll do that next week, but at least what we've done is we've understood the Mishnah. That we've understood that the Mishnah brings these 4 cases. Of course, you don't go over to a person at an inappropriate time, but that's because of you. This is not talking about because of you. This is talking about because of them. Because not that you shouldn't look like an idiot. You know, you go over to a person and you say something to them at an inappropriate time, you look like an idiot. But this Mishnah is not worried about you. Look like an idiot. It doesn't matter. Just go do the right thing. The Mishnah's worried about them. The Mishnah's worried about you causing damage and harm to the other person. And that's what we have to worry about. That's how sensitive we have to be. Okay, what we need to discuss, though, is, I guess, a little bit more about why the rabbis didn't say anything to Kamsa when he made the man. No, it wasn't Kamsa. It was actually the man that made the party. And we need to discuss these 4 things. Why specifically these 4 things did the Mishnah decide to teach us? To teach us that we have to be careful about invading another person's space, not because of us, but because of them. Okay, we'll stop here. Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, it's, like I say every week, it is so amazing. Odette, it's great to see you. It's amazing to see everybody, and even even the people's faces that I can't see, but your names shine also. It's just great. Really, really wonderful to see everybody, and I really appreciate, braving the traffic from your bedrooms to wherever you're learning. I appreciate fighting through the traffic to get to come and learn Torah. But you should know, somebody was telling me recently that it's a big mesiras nefesh. Like when you have to go to shul, and you gotta schlep, and especially if you're coming from from Carmel Valley, then you gotta sit in traffic and and get to the shul, and it's you get a lot of reward for it. Now it's much easier. You know what? I'm not sure it's much easier. I'm not sure in the comfort of your home that it's any easier to carve out time to sit and learn, because you're still, unless you're watching television behind your name there, but unless you're doing something else, it's not easy. You're in your house, you're comfortable, you could just easily, just relax and do whatever you need to do. Carving out time for learning Torah is always a challenge. So I appreciate the fact that we've carved out this time and we get to spend this time together each week. It's really a very beautiful thing. My blessing to everyone is that we should have an amazing, beautiful week, and another week where our eyes are open to see the real blessings in our lives, and that we continue to pray for all of those that are affected in a real way by this virus, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should send a refuah shlema, a healing, a quick healing speedily to all those that are affected. Okay, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. So long.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My pleasure. Thank you, Chana. It's nice to see you.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Okay, David, did I get it right? You were having a hard time with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll talk about it more next week. I could see. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Yep. Samach Beis Amar Aleph. We just finished the Mishnah.
Okay, so we looked at the Mishnah.
You're still recording.